Good morning, everyone. Good afternoon or good evening, depending where you're joining us from. And I'm very happy to see uh, people. I'm recognizing names of people that are connecting from all over the world, from participants from the course on access to decent work for refugees, and participants from other courses, and new names, which is exciting, because the purpose of this session is, yes, on the one hand, to conclude the recent course on access to decent work for refugees and other forcibly displaced persons that was organized by the ITC, International Training Center of the ILO, and the ILO together, but also to give a little insight, a little glimpse behind the scenes into how our courses work, how our sessions work, and a little bit how we address the different topics that form the heart of our courses. For those of you who haven't met me yet, for those of you who don't know me, my name is Michela Albertazzi, Miki for short. And I am a program officer in the labor migration cluster within the social protection, governance, and tripartism program at the International Center of the ILO, and I am the activity manager for this course. I am very, very happy to see you, so many of you joining for this session online. I am going to give you just a couple of indication, just a couple of announcements about how the session is going to work. And then I am going to pass the floor to our experts and speakers who have joined us for this session and who I'm very happy to have on board. So as you potentially already know, the session is being offered in both English and Arabic. So if you would like to use the interpretation, make sure to click on the globe icon at the bottom of your screen and then select excuse me, and then select the language that you would like to listen to. Make sure to check which channel you are listening to, because there may be the possibility that some of the questions from the floor that we will pick up may be asked in Arabic. So even if you are listening in English as the speakers are speaking in English, you maybe will need the interpretation if and when we will take some comments or questions on the floor, which will be in Arabic. If you would like to share any questions, any comments, any reflections on the topics that we addressed today, you will have the chance to do so by using the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. So type your question in there. We will pick it up from there and reply either speaking or through the Q&A box if appropriate. And if there is anything that you would like to share with the rest of the group, we can also see if we have the time to also give you the floor and bring you in. As you know, we like to keep our sessions as interactive as possible and as engaging as possible for the participants that join. So we're going to do our best to also replicate that feeling, let's say, that interaction in the session today. The session is also being recorded, and the recording will be made available after the end of the event for the participants in the course. It will be posted on the eCampus for other participants. We will share this through our YouTube channel, and you will receive a link at the same email address that you use to register for this webinar. So you've heard me mention the fact that this is the concluding session of the course on access to decent work for refugees and other forcibly displaced persons. And I'm very happy to see, by the way, many of the participants to the course that have joined us online. So we decided to use this last session, as I mentioned at the beginning, as a way of, on the one hand, bringing to light the topic of digital inclusion for refugees and other forcibly displaced persons, because we feel that it is a timely topic. We feel that there is a lot to unpack, and we are very excited to delve into the topic today with the speakers that have joined us for this session. And at the same time, as we said, we also wanted to use this as an opportunity to try and give a little bit of visibility to the course itself as well, and to give you an idea of how our courses work and how they are structured and what you can expect more or less from the different sessions in the course. The course is now in its 4th edition. It was run online for 2 editions, and now it is the second time that we are offering it in a blended format, which means that we are packaging together an online component at the beginning and then at the end of the course. And then in the middle, there is a face-to-face, a residential component where we really focus on the exchange of experiences, the opportunities for peer-to-peer learning between our participants, and for their and focus on the opportunity to also work concretely on case studies and to really promote group work and exchange among the participants that are joining us. The session today, as I mentioned, is dedicated to the topic of the digital inclusion of refugees and forcibly displaced persons, and it is organized in partnership with the ILO Prospects Opportunity Fund project titled Promotion, Inclusion and Protection of Refugees and Host Communities in the Gig Economy, which is implemented by the ILO in collaboration with UNHCR. And we're very happy to have online representatives both from the ILO and from the UNHCR. And I also would like to mention that under the umbrella of the Opportunity Fund project, the ILO has been able to establish some key partnerships, including with the UNDP and with Humans in the Loop, who are also participating in the session. So you will be able to hear more and to learn more about the work that these organizations are doing throughout the session. We have some excellent speakers lined up for you today, and I am going to introduce them to you as they take the floor. The way that we have structured this session is a bit of a panel discussion, but a little bit of an interview as well. So I have prepared some questions for the speakers, which you will hear in a moment. But as I said at the beginning, feel free to share your questions in the Q&A box, and we can pick them up from there and direct them to the speaker that you would like to direct them to. We're going to do a first round of question from my side. There we're going to stop and pick up some questions from the floor. So start to think about anything that you would like to contribute to the discussion, anything that you would like to ask the speakers, any clarification or additional information that you would like to receive. With this introduction, I'm going to stop for a moment, and I'm very happy to pass the floor to our first speaker today. Most of you may already know her. Her name is Héloïse Ruodel. She has been with us since the beginning of the course. And when I say the beginning, I don't necessarily only mean the beginning of this edition of the course, but from really the inception, or let's say the initial conception of the course. She is a little bit where it all started. Héloïse is a technical specialist on crisis migration at the International Labour Organization. And she has more than 20 years of experience working in forced displacement, humanitarian assistance, and development policies. And her work spans various international organizations, government ministries, NGOs, and academic institutions. So as you can see, she has a very varied background. And she has contributed to the ILO's policy framework on forced displacement and co-authored the background paper for the adoption of the guiding principles on the access of refugees and other forcibly displaced persons to the labor market in 2016, which are very much at the heart of the course and at the basis of the structure of the course. Héloïse, it's a pleasure to have you online. Thank you very much for joining us again for this concluding session. I'm going to pass you the floor for some opening remarks. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Miki. Hello, everyone. So I'm delighted to welcome you all, also on behalf of the ILO, to this special session on digital inclusions for refugees and other forcibly displaced persons, which, as Miki indicated, also marks the official end of this 4th edition of the course on access to decent work for refugees and other forcibly displaced persons. So let me first take this opportunity to thank the 28 participants of our course, and I'm very pleased to hear that many are with us today. Thank them for their active involvement over the past 5 weeks, but thanks as well all the colleagues and the partners, as well as the refugees who have been involved in facilitating the many interactive sessions that are built into this course and especially our UNHCR colleagues for the wonderful partnership. A special thanks as well. Miki mentioned that I was at the inception of this course, but someone else was. It is Professor Emeritus Roger Zatter from the Refugee Study Center at the University of Oxford, who's been working with us since the beginning to ensure, and every year, to ensure that the content of the course includes the latest data and cutting edge research on the subject matter. But last but not least, to finish with the thanks, a big thanks to Miki and to the ITC ILO team for the high quality training and course facilitation. So through the blended course, which matches, as Miki indicated as well, the structure of ILO's guiding principles on the access of refugees and other forcibly displaced persons to the labor market, we have notably unpack the complex drivers and trends of displacement, identify means to overcome challenges that refugees face in entering the labor market, and explore methods and tools to support their inclusion, enhance their employability and their labor rights, and achieve decent work for all. So traditionally, indeed, at the end of the course, we also include this opportunity for the ITC ILO and the ILO to engage with critical and emerging topics and to exchange ideas with a broader audience. For instance, in 2021, we launched ILO's compendium of lessons learned, emerging good practices and policy guidance, which was called Employment and Decent Work in Refugees and Other Forced Displacement Context. In 2022, we organized a webinar on the impact of the Ukraine crisis on employment and livelihood of refugees and IDPs and decent work responses. But this year, we were indeed very keen to address the question of digital inclusion for refugees. Digitalization is one of the most important new transformation in the world of work. And while it offers considerable potential as a source of employment and livelihood for refugees, and the forcibly displaced, new challenges emerge in ensuring decent work and inclusion in the digital economy. In 2021, we supported the development of a report which was called Digital Refugee Livelihoods and Decent Work Towards Inclusion in a Fairer Digital Economy. As since then, the involvement of the ILO, but also of other key partners, many of whom are here with us today, have really geared up and has been translated into concrete work at country level, notably under the ILO Prospects Opportunity Fund project, which Miki introduced earlier. So I also wanted to highlight that the topic came up on several occasions during the course itself. And so we're very much looking forward to this session to discuss with our panelists and with the broader audience several important aspects of how digital technologies can address the protection needs of the displaced population and enable access to decent work for all, including by learning from concrete examples of collaboration and innovative initiatives. So on that, I'll pass the floor over back to Miki, and welcome again to everyone.
Thank you, Eloise. Thank you very much for making the link between the overarching structure and the content of the course and the reason why we wanted to put forward this final concluding session and why we chose this topic specifically. So now to really jump into the topic for today, I would like to ask our colleague Zulum Avila from the ILO to take the floor. So my first question, Zulum, would be to you. And let me introduce you a little bit to the participants today. Zulum is a specialist on employment strategies in the digital economy at the International Labour Organization. And since March 2022, she's been supporting the economic inclusion and protection of refugees and host communities in the gig economy through the Prospects Initiative funded by the governments of the Netherlands. Zulum's work advocates for an inclusive and productive digital transformation and the application of new digital technologies for decent work and opportunities for populations that are traditionally underserved. So thank you very much for being with us, Zulum, today, and for your help in making this session a reality. My question to you would be the following. So we know that often displaced population face some specific challenges in access to decent work. And can you tell us how emerging technologies can help transform these challenges into opportunities? Thank you for being here, Zulum. You have the floor.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm really very enthusiastic to be here today to have the opportunity to share some of the findings and some of the work we have been doing with the partners that are here present with us. So, and I think this is a very wide question. And before tackling into the specific opportunities and the challenges, I will like to kind of set the scene a little bit. And I want just to perhaps refer to a piece of information that for sure all of the people that has been following this course with you at the ITCILO have been hearing, that in this 24, over 110 million of people is affected by forced displacement. So this means 1 in 70 people on the planet, roughly speaking, so to make it more easy to grasp and to picture. But the other relevant piece of information that the participants and the audience may want to note is that one of the most significant impacts of the COVID crisis on the labor force and in the labor market has been the dramatic increase in online work and remote work. Let me also share some few figures here from the ILO. We found that in 2020, when the peak of the COVID crisis was taking place, 1 in 6 workers were working remotely, and many of them did it from home. So this is a bit of 560 million people in the world, and this just had increased. So together with these changes, gig work has also increased. The online gig work facilitated by platforms. For example, let me also share with you one more important piece of information. In 2023, the World Bank estimated that 1 in 8 people in the world force were gig workers. So as you can see, these are not these are important numbers and can give us a dimension of what we are talking about. So now I would like to perhaps invite you to dive with me in the following. The gig economy and the digital labor platforms have become very important component of all this change, bringing opportunities to people that perhaps has been facing barriers to enter traditional employment, and I may say mobility barriers, skills barriers, etc. So these jobs are facilitated by platforms that we perhaps use ourselves or have heard about it. We have many examples out there. We have Uber, we have Lyft, we have Amazon Service, Upwork, but many more that are present at regional or local level, and they allow to the clients to use that application to order a ride, to ask for food delivery, have some beauty services delivered at home, or find a freelancer. No? For instance, if you ever have been in the need to produce a podcast, translate a document, develop a website, these are some options. And well, as the economy is growing, no, this digital gig economy is growing, the pool of digital workers is also expanding, as we just saw. And this is when I would like to make the link with the specific situation of people affected by forced displacement. Research shows that some groups, especially people, refugees, for example, or people with disabilities, value this type of work. We have had several discussions with them, and they are mainly highlighting that they help to overcome geographical and mobility barriers, but also help them in combining flexible working hours with other traditional jobs, and particularly in those areas where there are limited employment options. So as you can see, these emerging forms of work combined with digital technology can really help us to improve access into livelihoods and jobs. And not only that, but also can help us to connect them to upskilling, skills training, mentorship online, and also facilitate online financial services for the payment of their work. But while all this is expanding, there are also how do you say, challenges, no? And I would like to perhaps highlight the need to still address the digital divides, no? And the upholding refugee rights and ensuring decent work conditions, not only for refugees, but in general for workers that are making a living in platforms. And not to mention that in the specific context of people living, for example, in settlements or in refugee camps or in even in urban settings, but with some difficulties, there are still very concrete challenges like limited affordable internet connectivity, the access to the devices to work, whether it's a mobile phone, a tablet, a laptop, it continues to be a challenge. There is also the rapid evolution of digital technology. As you see now, everybody is referring to artificial intelligence, ChatGPT, and other technologies alike that are starting to replace some or to automate some of the tasks that were before performed by low-skilled workers. So just telling us about this need for continuous upskilling more than ever and more faster. So let me just mention something else. Productivity of these jobs and also the career options that people may have are also important questions. But in all this, we have found good partners to work with and to organize all these type of jobs in a way that can help people advance and enter the labor market, and then perhaps make a different trajectory other than the digital work. So finally, before closing my intervention, I also would like to mention something that is very important. There is a transnational nature of digital jobs, and this also brings unique challenges. That is, because the rights at work, social protection are all linked to national laws and regulations, and compliance and enforcement of these laws can be complicated if, for instance, the worker is based somewhere in Africa, somewhere in Asia, in Latin America, but the company that is employing him is based in the USA or someone else, because some days nowadays there are so many different branches that is very difficult to identify who is actually considered the employer here, or whether this person is just a freelancer. So there is a lot of issues with the classification of workers. So working outside of these national jurisdictions, indeed, it's let's say an opportunity. This is a means for many refugees that are still not granted the right to work at national level, but there are challenges that come along. Not even mentioning here the issue of cybersecurity, for example. So here I just quickly would like to start this discussion by offering some opportunities and challenges for your consideration. And just perhaps sharing that last week in Kenya, we have a regional forum on driving an inclusive and productive digital transformation. So if ever anyone in the room is or connected today is interested in learning more about all different aspects, this forum has been recorded, and I will be sharing the link in the chat. So let me stop there, because I think that we have still a lot to unfold. Over and back to you, Miki.
Thank you, Zulum. Thank you very much for this excellent introduction, or this way of setting the scene and really highlighting the specific characteristics of online gig work and how it applies to displacement context. So I think you've done an excellent job of already putting on the table many of the points that we are going to unpack further in the rest of the session. And I see that you've already, in a way, anticipated some of the questions that we have been receiving in the chat box, which are focusing, as you mentioned, on the issue of bridging the digital divide, on providing or ensuring that digital skills, digital education, in a way, is also provided. And so on. So we're going to come back to that in the rest of the session, hopefully. I would like to now to try and think a bit more about the different protection needs that displaced communities could have, and I would like to do that with our colleagues from UNHCR. So we have online today with us Amy Fallon, who is an Associate Innovation Officer at the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees, UNHCR. She works within the UNHCR's Innovation Service, which is dedicated to creating an enabling environment for innovation to flourish, equipping staff with the knowledge and resources needed to solve challenges through innovative solutions. Amy collaborates with various UNHCR teams to address challenges and create opportunities for data analytics, all while ensuring ethical and appropriate use of emerging technologies. So Amy, first of all, thank you very much for joining us today for this session. And then my question to you would be really looking at the role that these emerging technologies can play. So given the different contexts of forced displacement across different regions, how can emerging technologies be leveraged to meet the unique protection needs of different displaced communities? So Amy, thank you. You have the floor.
Thanks so much. So this is a pretty big question that you're asking, because there's so many ways that technology can be leveraged to meet protection needs of the forcibly displaced. And at UNHCR, we've kind of been consistently integrating technology into our work. But last year, we actually launched our first 5-year digital transformation strategy. And this has some really ambitious targets around enabling the digital inclusion of community members, but also ensuring that we as an organization are actually using technology in the best way possible to achieve, our own strategic objectives. So how are we using technology to meet the protection needs of the people we work with? Well, I would say that we use tech to achieve kind of 3 main goals. First would be improving our services, creating new opportunities, and enhancing protection. And when we talk about improving protection support services, a great example is the new ways we can now share critical information with community members. So for instance, following a successful pilot in several countries by the Innovation Service a few years ago, we're now rolling out a dedicated WhatsApp chatbot across the world, which will allow refugee community members to get really quick information on important, often life-saving topics from their phone, and also allow us to more easily triage and respond to protection concerns. So that's a great example. Provision of financial assistance using mobile money has also been so revolutionary, as have the many methods that have been used and tested and explored to provide services such as registration, RSD, feedback, all remotely. One Innovation Fund project that I could share is that we're currently testing in South Korea focuses on developing an AI-based system that drafts submissions to courts to aid refugees in lawsuits, for example. But then we look at kind of creating new opportunities, which is kind of a core part of our, or an extended for part of our protection mandate. And of course, our work on leveraging the opportunities of the digital economy is a good example of this, particularly in protracted refugee situations. We know that working online can be such an incredible opportunity for refugees to earn a living, and I'll talk maybe more about our specific work on this in a moment. But when we think about opportunity, we are also trying to broaden the narrative a bit beyond kind of economically productive opportunity and look at how technology can actually improve general happiness and well-being as well. So to that end, we work on issues such as digital leisure, digital community building, digital mental health provision. So for instance, we're currently working on a multi-region project which uses virtual reality to connect young people in refugee camps around the world and gives them a digital space where they can make art together. So kind of broadening that narrative, I guess, a little bit. And then finally, when we look at protection, the focus with technology is not just on how we can use it, but how we can best safeguard the use of it. And I guess this is a slight dichotomy, but a good example of this is with data. Technology obviously means we can connect incredible amounts of data to enhance our protection work, whether this is using predictive analytics to predict displacement, or using online social listening tools to monitor swells in anti-refugee sentiment online. However, of course, technology itself also poses protection risks. So a really important requisite focus that we have is on how we meld technology with the humanitarian sector safely. How do we hold our partners to really high data protection standards? How do we teach refugee communities to protect themselves online? So it's this sort of protection work that kind of feeds back again into this conversation on the digital economy and the research that I know ILO have spearheaded on online jobs platforms, for instance. Because while we want these technology facilitated opportunities to flow to refugee communities, we need to do so in a way that enhances protection rather than increases vulnerability. I'll stop there.
Thank you, Amy. Thank you for this introduction to the work that UNHCR has been doing. And I find very interesting this idea of adopting a holistic approach and looking at different dimensions of the digital life, let's say, of the digital world. So including the mental health dimension, including the wellness dimension, which I think is absolutely interesting. And I think you also did a little bit like Zulum did earlier. You also were able to anticipate some of the questions that we have received. I don't know if you've kept an eye on the Q&A box, but there was a question about how digitalization can help refugee gain access to financial instruments. So this is something that you touched on in your examples as well. So thank you very much for that. Let me maybe move to the next speaker that we have lined up today, who is Ening Wu, who is a senior policy advisor for forces placement at the United Nations Development Programme, the UNDP. Henny has contributed to reports such as Turning the Tide on Internal Displacement, a development approach to solution, where she collaborated with the Internal Displacement Monitoring Center. And her work focuses on addressing the challenges faced by internally displaced persons and finding sustainable solutions for their well-being and rights. And we're happy to share further links to the work that both Amy and Henny have been doing. So Henny, first of all, thank you very much for joining us today, once again, to you as well. My question to you would be, what strategies do you think can be envisaged to ensure that interventions using digital technologies in displacement contexts do not exacerbate the existing inequalities that are already there in the field, or that they don't marginalize certain groups within displaced population, within the host communities, or across the two? Over to you, Henny, and thank you very much for joining.
Thank you very much, Mickey, and thank you very much for inviting us. We're very pleased to be part of this panel, and very much look forward to working together on this. For sure, UNDP, our work on jobs and livelihoods, have been increasingly also working to include forcibly displaced and also to support host communities. And in terms of our digitally enabled livelihoods work, we tend to employ, or we try to think of three three factors, right, that we need to take into account. Often in a situation where inequality is already existing. So first of all, we think it's really important to get a strong baseline and also the understanding of what is the current access and usage of digital technologies across different groups. And also, we need to also consider that this the current access and usage should be also disaggregated according to gender and age as well. I think Zulum just now mentioned about the digital divide. I mean, one thing to be, to consider is definitely the gender digital divide, which is often worsened in displacement contexts. So, for example, there would be certain groups who do not have access to devices or even the skills to utilize such devices. And I think we've heard the statistics. Over half of refugees are women, and majority are under 18, in fact. So, for example, we can share kind of from a UNDP project targeting Venezuelan entrepreneurs in Peru. The team had found that Peruvian and Venezuelan women entrepreneurs they do have access to devices, but they don't necessarily have access to it full time all the time because they share this with other family members, which then limits the time they were able to spend learning or even conducting business transactions on these devices. So it's often interrupted. So the team then tried to factor this into the design and delivery of online business training. So making sure that it's shorter, it's modular, you can log in and log out easily, and it's on demand, and on WhatsApp, so that it can kind of cater to their needs. Secondly, we think it's really important that when it comes to, again, displaced populations and host communities specifically, that they participate in the design and testing of the technological solution. So, for example, in Turkey, UNDP adapted a digital platform that matched freelancers with online work, and it targeted Syrian refugee freelancers as well as Arabic-speaking host community members. The freelancers shared then feedback after using this for a while that just by registering on the platform, it doesn't mean that they then immediately get a job. So they asked support from UNDP to find out how do you bid for the work, how do they kind of increase their chances of getting work, whether it's through strengthening their profiles to attract clients. So UNDP made sure that we developed training modules that precisely address that, and in fact provided a dedicated platform manager to provide more tailored support depending on the members' profile and needs and skills. The third part to consider is, and I think many of us know this, is to partner with local organizations, especially in the design and in the delivery and communicating about this platform, and especially local organizations that are led by, again, forcibly displaced and host community members. They can then help to engage target users and also build more inclusive market networks. So, for example, in Peru, UNDP worked with local civil society organizations who are also serving Venezuelan migrants to recruit small business owners who can then benefit from trainings to digitalize their businesses. They are often led by Venezuelan migrants themselves, and they themselves then were able to leverage their social networks to spread the word. And in addition, the UNDP Peru team brought in actors from the entrepreneurial ecosystem. So this included from the private sector and academia to deliver the training curriculum together. And as a result, this became an iterative process. It provided insights on how to develop products and services that the market needs, and demand for, and also then promote more inclusive, a more inclusive ecosystem. So more specifically as well, I think with regards to digital labor platforms, we are very pleased to be working with UNHCR and ILO on a joint research to identify good practices of how inclusion and decent work can be promoted on digital labor platforms. We hope to publish this research in a joint report later this year. So look out for it and watch this space. Thank you. Over to you, Mickey.
Thank you very much, Henny. Thank you for this overview of the different initiatives that can be taken to ensure a more inclusive digital environment. So thank you for bringing, again, for picking up on some of the keywords that I see reflected in the interventions from the different speakers, but also in the questions from the floor. I would like to move now to hearing from a very concrete experience that is being carried out in different regions of the world. And I'm very happy to have online the team from an organization that is called Humans in the Loop. We have Tess Valbuena, who is Humans in the Loop CEO and experienced COO. Tess has over 25 years of experience and expertise in managing talent, driving operational excellence, and forging strong client relationships. She has a track record in strategic leadership, operational excellence, and fostering growth within organization. She is committed to driving innovation, to optimizing processes, and cultivating a high-performance culture. As COO and CEO of Humans in the Loop, Tess is dedicated to steering the organization towards continued prosperity, sustainable development, empowering and providing dignified digital work opportunities extended to vulnerable communities. And she is joined today by her colleague, Hester Gartrell, who is the Director and Chief Impact Officer of Humans in the Loop Foundation. So you will see that the Humans in the Loop reality has an interesting structure as well, which we're going to hear more about from Hester and Tess. So Hester has over 10 years of experience working with vulnerable groups to provide access to education and support people to flourish. And in her role as director and CIO, Hester oversees all of the organization's impact-facing work, including digital upskilling and training for the community of professionals affected by conflict. Hester is dedicated to making structural and social change, championing and elevating the voices of people impacted by conflict. So we're going to hear about their work and the work that they have been carrying out, like I said, with this interesting structure, but also hearing about concretely what were some of the challenges and some of the obstacles that they had to face and how they managed to find a solution to that. And perhaps Tess and Hester, you can also tell us a little bit you can tell us about your experience as an example of an initiative where technology has been used effectively to empower refugees and enhance their economic integration, but also you can tell us a bit about what you think would be some key considerations for ensuring scalability and also the sustainability of the digital inclusion programs that are targeting displaced populations, because we know that often conflict affected areas or displacement situations, are settings that are very much resource constrained. So over to you, Tess and Hester, and I know that you have some slides for us to see. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Michelle. First, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever the case may be. I'd like to start by thanking the ILO, the ITC, UNHCR, UNDP, and everyone behind organizing this event for the chance to experience and meet and connect with all of you, and more importantly, the opportunity to introduce our organization, Humans in the Loop, and share our story and experience with all of you. As Michelle already introduced, I'm Tess Valbuena. Next slide, please, Hester. All right, so I'm going to start us off with a bunch of numbers or statistics. I know that Zulum has touched on these statistics a little bit, but I'm going to cover it again because it's quite problematic. And I don't want to scare anyone, but just right off the bat, I'll start with 114 million. So as of Q4 of 2023, over 114 million are forcibly displaced due to war, persecution, and human rights violations. So this marks as the largest increase in forced displacement in all of UNHCR's history. Amy should know this. And obviously, this is propelled by the war in Ukraine, other deadly conflicts, and natural calamities. So just to put that in perspective, 114 million is more than the population of Germany. And it's even expected to surge exponentially that by 2050, there could be 1.8 billion refugees worldwide. Now, that's quite a massive number. And again, if you want to unpack that, 1.8 billion is more than the entire population of China, right? Or looking at it from a different angle, that's already 23% of the current global population that could be displaced by 2050. And in fact, in 7 years, in 2030, 2/3 of the world's extreme poor will be living in fragile environments. And in these circumstances, many will be forced to take jobs that are unsafe, unstable, and do not even meet, the minimum daily living wage. So that's the conundrum. Next slide, please, Hester. But I'm going to add some more numbers to that statistics. The World Economic Forum suggests that AI will replace 85 million jobs across the globe by next year. So a lot of people are talking about this, afraid about this, and anxious about this. But on the flip side, the technology will also create 97 million jobs. So it's not all doom and gloom. And one of the increasingly popular jobs created by machine learning and AI is being a professional human in the loop, which will significantly and constantly increase because, as we all know, AI still needs human input to deal with the biases, the ethics, and the complexities of our society. Next slide, please, Hester. Now, just to give everyone an overview, the term human in the loop in the machine learning space is a model or a system requiring human interaction. So let's imagine a machine or program not doing what it's supposed to do or not being able to solve a problem. Then that's when it needs human intervention. So this process results in the creation of a continuous feedback loop. Now, currently, the demand for gold standard human annotated data used in traditional machine learning pipelines is very high. And as more and more companies are adopting machine learning ops processes and infrastructure, the need to plug in more humans in the AI lifecycle will become even bigger. So that's good news. Next slide, please, Hester. So in the past year, we've started seeing increasing trends in human operators monitoring AI models. This is in the deployment and handling, critical alerts, which will be crucial to ensuring optimal functions and results, as well as compliance with regulatory guidelines, especially in high-risk AI systems. Now, why are we seeing this sudden spike in this trend? One of the contributing factors is the EU AI Act, which some of you may have heard, some of you may not have known about it, but just for the benefit of those who are not familiar with it, the EU AI Act is set to become the world's first comprehensive legal framework for artificial intelligence. It was passed last year, and it's targeted to come into force by next year. Now, this will require all high-risk AI systems, be it in education, recruitment, law enforcement, migration, surveillance, etc., to have human operators who oversee the functions. Now, even generative AI systems like, your ChatGPTs, your Geminis, your Bards would have to comply with transparency requirements. Next slide, please, Hester. So before I wrap up, I just want to say that Humans in the Loop does not only support those people displaced by conflict towards, financial independence, but we also support data annotation projects that make a broad social impact. So we help make AI systems more diverse, bias-free, ethical, and inclusive. We have a very stringent policy, and we make conscientious decisions around the projects that we work on. Data for good annotation projects may be in the sectors such as medical, agri-tech, energy tech, climate tech, just to name a few. And as passionate advocates for of AI for good, we contribute to AI systems that benefit our society. So in summary, how can machine learning, artificial intelligence, and all of this technology, or even data annotation, help with the enormous barriers to work that exist in conflict-affected regions and displaced communities? I would like to pass on the room to Hester, our Chief Impact Officer and Director of our foundation, to talk more about this. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Tess. So as Tess has mentioned and discussed in detail, we really do see the opportunity between people who've been displaced and are searching for a new career or to move forward with their professional identity and their professional skills, and the opportunities that AI opens up. There are increasing jobs and opportunities to develop skills in the area of IT, particularly around artificial intelligence. And at Humans in the Loop, we specifically focus on utilizing this by our unique model. We are a social enterprise made up of a foundation and a profit-making company. And our company offers annotation services, which has already been shown on our previous slides, to international clients, but our entire workforce are people affected by conflict. So we really do see annotation and in the future, as AI develops so quickly, other areas within this sphere as an opportunity. And why? Why did we pick this as our opportunity and our area of work? Well, annotation is very easily trainable. It doesn't require a high level of English language, for example. So it can be a really great opportunity for somebody who's been recently displaced, who is looking to regain their financial independence, to support their family. And we can train quickly, and we can provide support to the most vulnerable, even people who have not previously had the opportunity to work remotely, to work in the IT sphere, etc. However, annotation is also an opportunity for people who are highly skilled. So it has this dual approach, which is really fantastic, because we know how diverse the skills and work experience of people who are in conflict zone or who are displaced are. So at Humans in the Loop, one of our most recent projects is Doctors in the Loop, which engages medical professionals who've been displaced to utilize their extensive medical expertise to support on the annotation of images and videos to develop medical innovations in AI. We also see in the future many opportunities for people, for example, who are engineers. Tess has spoken about the EU AI Act. Here you can see how people who are experts are really going to be vital to overseeing AI systems that are very niche, that work in a very specific industry. We know that this is going to be integrated into all of our lives. And even though sometimes we might be presented with AI as a completely independent model that doesn't need human interaction, this is in fact not true. And so there are a multitude of opportunities for people to engage. And especially, as we know, in the IT sector, often opportunities are remote, and this can open up the opportunities to people globally across the world to work flexibly and even to work in situations of ongoing displacement. So how do we actually provide this work? We've already spoken about, and I can see in the chat and the Q&A that there are a number of questions about financial access. And this is a really big challenge for people who are refugees, who've been displaced, who perhaps don't have access to a bank account, who cannot access traditional payment models such as PayPal, who will struggle to engage with those traditional platforms that distribute micro work. So this is where Humans in the Loop, I think, has a really innovative model that can challenge this. We are working with partners on the ground in a number of regions. We have long-term partnerships in Syria, in Lebanon, Iraq, Afghanistan. We are a Bulgarian-founded organization, so we work in Bulgaria. We're very happy to, with the support of ILO, have recently started in-depth work as well in Kenya with a partner, Learning Lions. By pairing with local NGOs, often refugee-led, on the ground, we can recruit people, we can train people, and we can distribute payment in a way that works for the individual on the ground. So again, we can reach the most vulnerable people, and that includes people who perhaps struggle with traditional financial inclusion due to the restrictions that local governments or banking institutions have put in place. So what has been our model? Is it scalable? You asked, how can we make these things scalable? Local partnerships are absolutely key. To date, we have provided project-based work to over 1,000 people. We have supported many women into the workplace. We have a very focused approach to making sure that women are included in our projects. We've trained over 600 people, and most importantly, we've also distributed over 1.4 million in salaries, despite these challenging circumstances that often exclude people. So what do I want to say to finish up? Involvement of local partners and collaboration is absolutely key. Access to training, we deliver everything online. We ensure that our partners have spaces where people can go to use laptops, to use computers. Access to tech is absolutely vital, but it has to be supported access to tech. Same with access to internet and to training and to personalized support. So at Humans in the Loop, we're always calling for a change in the narrative. So let's move away from this discussions about people who are displaced being a burden to local economy, to seeing this as a challenge. Let's see this as an opportunity. Let's talk about skills. Let's talk about professional experience, because these people are professionals in many cases with a lot of expertise and ambition to bring. And we can also talk about this in the context of economic development for host communities, for Europe, and globally in relation to the IT sector. So let's finish up, and I'm going to hand back to Michaela.
Thank you very much, Hester. I was busy taking notes. I think all of the information that you shared was absolutely super interesting and super relevant to the session today. And I note once again the way that we stress the importance of working with the local partners, engaging the local partners as much as possible. This was stressed by different speakers today. And also, I think if we have one key, if I were to mention one single key learning that we have been able to take out from the whole course, it would be that there is no prescriptive solution. There is no one size fits all. And there is a deep need to really engage with the local context, to understand the local context, and to think about solutions that are tailored to the situation that we find on the ground. So thank you very much for this very passionate presentation about the work that Humans in the Loop is carrying on. We have a number of questions, as you can probably see in the chat. We also have a couple of raised hands, but I'm going to start perhaps from the questions in the chat, because I see that while they come at the topic from different directions, it seems to me that a lot of them have to do with the issue of access in two ways, it seems to me. So one is the concrete access to internet connections, to devices, to SIM cards, and so on. So the very practical part of it. And then on the other side, also access to opportunities for skills development, opportunities to enhance one's skills, but also to use the skills that they may already be bringing into. As I said, many of the people that you work with are professionals who already have expertise and who have the ambition and also want to use that expertise. And so opportunities for skills development, opportunities for work and decent work, hopefully. And then opportunities to access also financial mechanisms that make sense given the specific context. So this is a bit of a question that is aimed, I think, in a way at the whole panel. I know that there is already a lot of work being done out there. What would be some key initiatives, key examples that you can bring to the light that have to do with enhancing this access? So increasing or facilitating the inclusion and the digital inclusion of displaced population by increasing access. And I'm maybe going to go through Zulum first, because I see that you are nodding, so it looks as if you have something that you want to share. So I'm going to go to you first, and then I'll follow the same round, Amy, then Henny, and then the Humans in the Loop team. Thank you.
Yes, it's impossible not to know because so many of these questions are so pertinent, and we have been reflecting on that and also seeing practical changes. I think that perhaps something that I would like to share here in this panel is an example on access to financial instruments. If you are going to be working online, you will need to be paid also many times online. And it's true that especially for forcibly displaced populations, sometimes they do not have the access to a bank account with e-banking. But this is and there are different solutions or possibilities, as you say here. So perhaps one that is very practical and connected with Hester and Tess' work is that for those who are really very eager to work. I mean, we have the case of, we're trying to bring humans in the loop to the interventions the ILO is having in Uganda, where refugees live in settlements. And there are there are local organizations that are supporting over a few years young women. They had started to gain access to a school, to a computer. By the way, in Uganda, in the schools, there are no computers that students can access. So the only points where they can really learn the basic digital literacy and how to develop other competences in digital jobs are through the initiatives by some of the partners here, UNHCR, the ILO, UNDP. Government is also very supportive to that, but also because of the intervention of good partners like Humans in the Loop. So for those people, what they do is that they transfer the salaries or the payment to the local partner, and the local partner cash it in. For example, this is one very practical hands-on solution. But on the other hand, we have seen also an improvement in the settlement. A few years ago, there was no, the only way to get money online was to leave the settlement and have an intermediary, use an intermediary, a friend, pay a fee. Nowadays, there are 3 branches of a bank in the settlement. So, this financial institution has been also collaborating with the different partners in the settlement to educate people to use all these instruments. For example, if you are working for someone who is going to be paying your salaries in dollars, but your money is in Uganda shillings, then you will be pay a fee, you will pay some commissions, and then you need to know that this is going to happen. But people sometimes were surprised and they were feeling like robbed. Just because they were lacking the information. They were lacking the information about what's the correct type of bank account they need to use. And this all was simplified. Now, it took before 5 days for at the beginning for a refugee person in the camp to open that bank account. Now it takes less than 5 minutes because also UNHCR has been digitalizing their database. So for the bank, it's very easy to just verify using a QR code what's the identity of this person. So let me just stop there because I'm sure that my colleagues can bring plenty of examples in. But as you see, there is two, let's say, parallel process taking place still. Some that are still very structural and that will need time to be solved. So you need to find very practical and hands-on solutions as the ones that we are finding with Humans in the Loop. But together with other institutions, we are now able to say that the refugees in Naki Valley in Uganda have 3 banks and access to a very quick bank account and more information about how to use it and benefit. So over.
Thank you, Zulum. Amy, I don't know if you have also any insights about this idea of enhancing access, especially since you mentioned earlier some very interesting and very innovative initiatives using, for example, virtual reality and so on. Is there any work that is being done to improve access? Thank you.
Yeah, definitely. And I think this question and even how you phrased it reflects a really guiding belief of ours, which is when it comes to creating an inclusive digital economy, you need to take a systems approach to programming. You know, it's not enough to just throw someone a skills training and a laptop or even an internship or a starter job. You need to look at so many other elements, you know, the underlying regulatory environment, intersectional barriers, including gender, disability, connectivity, access. So to kind of address all of these different elements, we've done several things. So we started through the Prospects Fund by running community-based workshops in 7 different countries in camp and urban locations to try and uncover the different challenges that refugee communities are facing, and then also co-create solutions to these barriers. And I can share this report in the chat. It's really interesting. And then off the back of that, we opened a call for proposals for UNHCR country teams to actually design themselves pilots alongside the refugee communities that they work with that seek to address or improve kind of different elements of this ecosystem. So maybe just to mention a few of these examples. So in Ethiopia, we've partnered with Pan-African online freelance platform Gabeya to create a version of their existing online jobs platform that's specifically targeted and tailored to refugees. So this platform is called Boundless Skills. You can have a look at that apply, and I'll share a link in the chat. It's been operational for a couple of months now and onboarded 500 digitally skilled refugees. And I think nearly or over 100 now are in the process of doing or interviewing for the available online jobs since we opened a few months ago. So that's really looking at the demand side. So how do we create an easy access to the demand for online jobs? Then in Egypt, we responded to a different issue, which is the need for English in many online jobs. So for this, refugee youth were trained by their peers in English for Freelancers, an English for Freelancers course, which is developed by the British Council. And then we started a partnership with Duolingo so that those who completed that course had the opportunity to complete an English language certification because they actually provide accredited online language testing. And then finally, in Uganda, we looked at kind of the issue of like physical access and also the sustainability of that physical access. So we worked alongside an NGO called Hello World to test models for community-led approaches to maintaining sustainable digital hubs. So with the community, they refurbished a digital hub, provided digital skills training, and then elected a community-led management board to actually try and avoid this common issue of projects building digital hubs in refugee camps, and then the project funding ends, there's this huge drop-off, and you get, you know, all of these disused spaces. So yeah, I'll stop there, but I guess these are just examples of how we've spoken to different elements of the ecosystem, but that really you need an inclusive approach to be successful. Thanks.
Absolutely, Amy. Thank you. Thank you very much for that. Henny, is there anything that you also would like to share? I know that there is a collection of best practices that is being, or emerging practices that is being put together by the different agencies. So if you would like to maybe share some highlights from that.
Sure. Well, I don't want to, to spoil the the upcoming publication, but I can share with you something that we are also working on actually with UNHCR and ILO colleagues, and and by the way, I just want to say I'm learning so much as well from Zulum and Amy. So it's great to hear about all these initiatives as well. So I think one example that I can think of as well is around, around having a standardized, perhaps digital qualification that is accepted by many countries across borders. I think that's quite an interesting aspect. And the reason I raise this is that recently, we did a joint multi-sector needs assessment looking at the socioeconomic integration of Ukrainian refugees in the host countries. And what's interesting, is that, as many of us know, Ukrainian refugees, do have the right to work in all of the host countries, in most of the host countries in Europe. And yet, despite this access, a lot of them are actually having difficulty accessing decent jobs. And one of the reasons, well, there are a number of barriers. One of them is around language, of course, and then the other one is actually around qualifications. So some of the Ukrainian qualifications, even though you have a very, quite a good proportion of skilled labor force, is not recognized in many of the host countries, and I think this is quite an interesting challenge to see again how can what are the kinds of digital solutions that we can come up. I shared in the chat a report that we did from a number of years ago, and and we spoke to a number of academic institutions, for example, on the possibility of providing again digital qualifications that can transcend borders, that can be recognized more universally. So I think this is maybe that's the one example that I can think of to share as well and contribute to this. And I saw that there's some questions around that as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Annie. Yes, definitely. And we see that more and more questions are coming in, so we're definitely going to go a little bit more in detail into that as well. And Hester, I was wondering if you also have any experiences specifically maybe around the work that you're doing with AI or in that area. Thank you.
I think for us, while we are a tech company and we're specifically focusing in the area of AI, I noticed that the previous speakers have mainly spoken about these kind of larger challenges. And I think for us, I would want to touch on this, which is that while we can provide access to annotation work, which is a great first step into the IT sector, it's also a chance for people to regain financial independence, to support their family. There are massive structural issues, which is around this access to banking systems, essentially, because while you can offer someone an initial role, you can support them to upskill, in some locations, there just is a barrier that sits for that person to take that next step. Which is to move on from annotation and to become a quality assurance assistant, or to become a graphic designer, etc. So we are offering this package of courses, but for some people, they do face this massive barrier. And this is why we're so keen to have discussions with UN, ILO, etc., because we know that they are working at this very strategic level. We are a small social enterprise that's working globally, but at the same time, we're very much focused on the day-to-day and how can we provide support for somebody in the situation that they are in now. So it's really vital, I think, for both those sides of the sector to come together. Those that are kind of, and also obviously bigger organizations do offer both that on the ground support and that strategic pressure on governments, on large institutions. But for us, yes, I would say that's really the big challenge. In relation to AI, I think there also is a discussion to be had about how many companies that work in this sphere who are looking for annotators, who are looking for people who are humans in the loop, do pay a very low wage. And we know that also micro work does often, many platforms that provide micro work, there is now an ecosystem where the price is pushed lower and lower. And this is a massive issue, because if you are a business trying to act ethically, you're competing against this very low price point. It also pushes people to work in an unsafe way, either by working very long hours, spending a lot of time searching for jobs but not finding something, potentially working on things like reviewing content which is mentally traumatic for them, if they're doing content revision for big social media platforms, for example. So there are definitely conversations to be had about opportunities in this sector, but also how do we make this sector safe? Because with anything that kind of develops quickly, it can develop before processes, procedures, and regulations are put in place. And certainly within the field of AI, we see this where people are being taken advantage of because they are just looking for some way to make a living, and potentially are being paid below a living wage, and also are being approached by their companies or by clients to work on projects which are damaging in terms of mental health, with very little support behind that and very little recognition of the context which those people are in. So, for example, at Humans in the Loop, we do not do any content review for social media platforms, just because we believe that it will expose our community to too many traumatic images and videos, and within their situation, they're already vulnerable. This is not appropriate. So I think there's also a question about regulation and safe work.
Absolutely, Hester, and thank you very much for bringing this up, this idea that you mentioned technology often develops faster than policies or procedures do. So I'm going to go back to Zulu maybe for a comment on this, and how can, or what is the ILO doing specifically to ensure that international labor standards can be mainstream, can be used to ensure that jobs in the digital economy are aligned with decent work principles, especially for persons that are already in a vulnerable situations, like the displaced communities and the host communities alike. Thank you.
Miki, thank you. This is again a very broad question, but let us perhaps chop it in different pieces so we can see each of the elements that are involved. And I will try to also keep it short, perhaps picking up on what Esther just said. So how we safeguard workers and business interests, because this gig economy is also being used and also being challenging also the operation of businesses. But well, first of all, let me start with explaining very briefly what are the international labor standards. So those are legal instruments created by or facilitated by the ILO through tripartite consensus, so governments, employers, workers, and they establish basic principles and rights at work. So these standards are integrated later on into national laws, indeed to safeguard workers and business interests. So, but in the context of the gig work and the platform economy that we have been discussing today, the international labor standards indeed can help to ensure decent work, but there is a lot of work to still do here. For example, last year in October 2022, only to understand better and to hear the voices of workers and employers, the ILO organized an experts meeting to try to find what are those specific common points. And then because the positions sometimes are very, how to say, difficult to conciliate in regarding to a specific rights at work, like for instance, collective voice and representation is one of them. The ILO also decided to request and prepare a normative gap analysis that was published in March 23. All this documentation is available online. And some of the normative gaps that were identified in between, only on international labor standards, are related to one of them, and very important, is combating these gig employment relationships. So indeed, a lot of the work that is happening in platform work and the gig economy is done by self-employed or autonomous workers. But in some cases, and we have seen many situations around the world where there is a misclassification of those workers, and they really have an employer who is not kind of complying with the different national laws applying, and then because of this misclassification or the DG's employment relationship, then workers are deprived from access to certain rights at work, including social protection, minimum wage, resting hours, vacations, pensions, etc. So that's one thing. With that, I don't want to say that there are not really that there are not real self-employed and autonomous workers here, right? It's just a question of misclassifying when there is an employer behind and wanted to avoid the additional cost that takes for the company to cover these rights. Another one of those normative gaps is preventing discrimination biases in the use of algorithms. No, there is a lot talking about AI in this meeting. A lot of these platforms are also managed by algorithms, and sometimes they have some discriminatory biases towards workers. So that's another thematic area. The practical implementation of labor inspection, which is really a very difficult area because the worker is at home. So the definition of where is your workplace, it's really difficult to solve. Can your home or the office at your home be considered your workplace? So that's another very, very important discussion that we are, or thematic area we're discussing at the ILO. And also, well, how to assess or how to put in place systems for remedies and dispute resolution mechanism. No, this is very, we have many examples on traditional jobs, but when there is not a clear identified employer or the person is a self-employed worker, or there is also not these tripartite actors that we were used to have before, it's a bit more difficult. So in spite of these areas of or gaps that needs to be still addressed, also Hester mentioned that the technology and the form of the evolution of all these non-standard forms of work is taking place in a way that is much faster than the evolution of laws and the standard labor and the international standard labors. But well, in anyhow, this system is important because of the following. We need them to ensure workers' protection. No? And these regulations are important to provide with the recognition of, for instance, the gig worker status. Well, I'll give you an example. In Kenya, we are kind of having discussions with different stakeholders, including the government, the employers, workers, and many other actors, on the importance of recognizing the category of I worker in national legislation, or in the labor code, and also to work around the correct classification of platform and gig workers in the national legislation, so they can, this all can lead to fair treatment, to safety, to social protection, including access to health insurance or retirement plans. The disparities on wages, no, and the fair compensation for these workers in different countries. We have been mapping situations where the workers that are outside of countries where there is a strong regulatory framework, a solid regulatory framework, sometimes are paid much less than their peers in developing countries, for example, for the same work. We also mentioned, I would like to also mention that international labor standards cover situations of addressing excessive working hours, no, working time, resting time, situations of harassment, and this has to be also reflected for online workers. Tax compliance is another important issue. No, regulations track income and ensure proper tax payment. And against that, for those paying those taxes, there will be then access to other services, other benefits, including, for example, social protection. And then finally, let me mention the representation and collective bargaining, because online workers do not have a meeting place in an office, in a factory. They are sitting at home or somewhere else by themselves. It's very difficult to kind of organize collectively for them, and also start to join a trade union. But this situation is changing. Trade unions are also thinking about how, and have been very supportive in some cases of workers in the platform economy. And there have been emerging new organizations of workers, for example, and sorry, I'm referring so much to Kenya, but we just were there last week and actually discussing with one of the new collectives that was formed a couple of years ago. They are called iWorkers. So they are all freelancers working from home, looking at ways of collectively fighting for their rights, and also represented in the discussions for the definition in law of iWorkers. So, and working also with the National Trade Union there to see how they can get also affiliated to it. But well, those are some of the questions I wanted to discuss with you. Perhaps just my last point is to ask you to stay tuned, because the International Labour Conference in June 2025 will be discussing again in a tripartite setting all this, and we are hoping that these discussions will lead to the standard setting, so to the creation of an international labor standard for the regulation of platform works, which will be really very important. Very recently, if you want to also have a look, I think it was in March, the European Union Directive for Platform Workers was adopted, and also is extending collective rights to all persons and working in platforms and in gig work that is facilitated by these online platforms. So I think I will stop there. As you see, there is a lot to discuss, but I hope that this can give you sufficient insight into how international labor standards can help and are helping advancing the rights at work for this collectivity.
Thank you, Zulum, and thank you also. I see that you have touched on some of the questions that were already sort of waiting in the Q&A box. There was a question by Cristiano saying that due to the location of the worker and the platform in different countries, there may be problems with the control, with the inspection of working conditions, with income declaration, with tax avoidance, which is something that you have addressed. And there was again a request in the chat for more information about labor inspection and the role that labor inspection can play, or how can it be put is there any strategy that can be followed in these cases? And we have seen that this is still a challenging area. And Harriet is also pointing out in the chat that another critical area is around workers' compensation for injury or any disease which arises out of and in the course of employment, something that is challenging to claim or take action around. And wherever possible, the law should be amended in order to take into consideration these situations as well. There is one question in the Q&A that has been waiting for a little while, and it is about the situation of those displaced persons who are trapped in the informal economy. And so the question is framed around the role that the artificial intelligence can possibly have can it have a positive impact? Can it improve the work and life conditions of displaced persons that are working in the informal economy. So I wonder if you have any, and I'm directing this to the entire panel, if you have any experiences that you would like to share or any good practices. And I know the Humans in the Loop is working a lot specifically on AI related issues, but I wonder if also other colleagues would like to come in on this. Thank you.
Perhaps very, very briefly, Michaela, I think artificial intelligence and in general, I think that this is a very advanced technology that is not always available in many of the countries that the ILO is serving. Developing countries and we have discussed that infrastructure, access to connectivity, etc., is one of the barriers. But nevertheless, this digital transformation is happening, not only in the world of work, but also in the digitalization of services provided by government. And I may say that the digitalizing services brings an enormous advantage. And this is that you can collect information, data, and you can trace transactions, you can trace who's paying taxes, etc. So I think this traceability that is offered by digital technology can help us start regulating some areas of in the informal economy. I've seen that it's not a process that will take someone from the informal job into a formal job, but start formalizing some procedures. And I think that one of the most important one is to allow countries to start collecting taxes, the payment of taxes, and then workers to start perhaps having some access to benefits like social protection, health insurance systems to start contributing. So I think that we cannot think anymore about changing at once the system, but introducing changes that will gradually help us to shift of those systems, and then starting to see gradual change. I may say that, but I know that there are other institutions present here that have been doing also excellent job and will have a lot to share. Thank you.
Thank you, Zulum. And I wonder if Amy and Henny also have anything that they want to contribute on this point. So not necessarily on facilitating the transition to formality, but how we can address the situation or the workers that are displaced workers that are working in the informal economy. Thank you.
Maybe I can just quickly say that I think with the growth of the use of AI and the opportunities that it brings, something that it needs to serve as a lesson to, I guess, humanitarian development actors is how we visualize our livelihoods programming. So looking with a very forward-thinking view about the sectors that may be impacted by AI, but also the opportunities that the use of AI can bring to refugees. And so when we're thinking about what skills we want to try and equip people with, where we want to put our money in terms of preparing people for launching from the informal to the formal economy, I think having a strong understanding of AI and its impacts is going to be extremely important.
Thank you, Amy. Henny.
Thanks, Mickey. No, I think this is super interesting, and I think we wouldn't do it justice to resolve it here. But I think maybe some key questions to consider is I think I fully agree with Zulum and Amy as well. The potential of AI to really start to make visible, forcibly displaced populations who are in the informal sector, right? And whether we can gather this data, how do we make use of this technology to better gather the data that's needed, map again, across displacement affected situations. What are the access to labor conditions? What is the coverage, the usage? As we mentioned before, what is the baseline, right, of digital labor, and using AI to be able to, again, hopefully find out better what are the conditionalities, what are the challenges, where are the opportunities, and and bringing it to light and seeing how that should then impact on again legal policy environment. I think to contribute to that evidence building and data gathering efforts, and this is where I think we need to explore how AI can help us do that. So yes, from the point of view of how do we ensure that refugees, IDPs, stateless people, can make use of AI when they do have access. But then how can also governments understand better what are the barriers, right, that they are facing, and putting this in a kind of in a mapping that can help to inform policy decisions. Thanks.
Thank you, Annie. Hester, I don't know if you have anything that you would also like to share. Thank you.
Yeah, so I wanted to talk in two parts. Firstly, about access to employment, and secondly, about access to learning. So for access to employment, I've already mentioned, and as has Tess, that we think there are many opportunities for work within the AI sphere. I definitely see opportunities for governments, for example, to look at how this can support their local economy. Let's take the situation of Lebanon. Here we know that many refugees do not have access to the formal economy, or if they do, it's extremely limited. We also know that the economy in the country is facing many challenges. However, most of the people who are refugees within Lebanon cannot access remote work because of their access to bank accounts. So here you can see a situation where actually is that a conversation we need to have on a strategic global level, that there is support for people who are refugees to access jobs outside the country, and how can that be facilitated in a way that actually is going to benefit that individual, but also benefit the economy of the local area more widely. So we live in a globalized economy, and we need to start thinking about how can we ensure that localized employment and refugee policies reflect those global opportunities. At the moment, while there are so many remote jobs, there still is a massive barrier to many people who are refugees or who are displaced actually accessing those jobs because of local labor regulations. So this would be one thing that I would say. Let's think about globalizing local employment laws so that we actually can capitalize on those AI and IT opportunities. Secondly is something a little bit more focused around education and integration. I think that AI has really great potential to support people in that. In the education sector, one of the things that is constantly coming up is how this question, is AI going to make teachers redundant? No, but AI can offer people personalized learning plans. It can support them to learn languages. I'll give some examples from our own organization. We are employing many people who are displaced, and we use AI to take notes in our meetings. We use it to support us to check our emails. We use it to summarize documents. Can you see how in the situation of someone who's displaced, who's in a country where perhaps they don't speak the language, you can then send a law or a email or a document that's relevant to your situation to an AI model that can then summarize it and provide you that summary in your own language. So actually it democratizes information that is about rights and about somebody's individual context. So we can think about that in terms of things like language learning, but we could also think about that in terms of access to information about the legalities in that country and that person's right as a refugee or as somebody who's displaced. So in addition to these services that the humanitarian actor can offer, so the NGO sector, this personalized support person to person, you also have this wider democratization of knowledge through things such as ChatGPT, which, you know, we could debate a lot longer about challenges related to those models as well, but there are positives as well.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Hester, for sharing that. Just quickly, there is one comment from Cristiano saying that has a labor inspector. So that's where a little bit where his question was coming from earlier. In Portugal, they are deeply concerned with these issues, and in terms of labor legislation, they have already put in place some changes due to platform work to try to align it with the EU directive. So this is definitely one area where a lot of changes and a lot of updates are ongoing and are going to be potentially accelerating even further in the future. So thank you, Cristiano, for bringing that to our attention. We have one raised hand that has been waiting very patiently in the attendee list from Elijah. So Elijah, if you're still there and if it's an actual raised hand to share a question, I'm happy to give you the floor. It has disappeared, so perhaps, yes, it's still there. Yes, Elijah, we're happy to hear from you. You would need to unmute your microphone, and then I believe we can take your question. Can you unmute your microphone so we can hear from you? Perhaps there are some technical issues. So Elijah, if you would like to share your question, feel free to do so in the chat. I see that there's another raised hand from Mohammed Yusuf. Mohammed, if you have a question that is related to the topic of the course of the digital inclusion of refugees, we're happy to listen to you. Let me just see if I can maybe lower the, okay. So Elijah, please, if you are unable to open your microphone. Okay. But the microphone needs to be open for us to be able to hear. So if you can take the floor, feel free. Otherwise, let's try to. Okay. Okay. Marion, can you give me a heads up when the switch has been made, so that they are so that Elijah can ask his question. Otherwise, feel free to just put it in the chat and we can pick it up from there.
Thank you, Miki. I have already promoted Elijah, and I just promoted also Mohammed. So they can speak now if they unmute.
Thank you. Okay, then it seems that there may be some technical issue in terms of access to the microphone. So let us maybe move to a very quick round of closing remarks. From my side, first of all, I would like to thank all of you for participating. Thank the participants to the course that have taken the time to join us today, but also all of you who were not part of the course on access to decent work for refugees and other forcibly displaced persons, but who have expressed this interest in the work that the ITC ILO is doing, and the ILO is doing in collaboration with the partner organizations in this area. One very big, excuse me, I'm getting long messages in the chat box, so let me stop my thank yous first and see if we can get this comment from Harriet. Harriet is writing. Harriet is joining us from Uganda, if I am not mistaken. Let me check. Yes, Harriet is from Uganda. So she is writing in the message in the chat box on refugees or displaced persons accessing jobs offshore while in the destination country. Calls a lot on the prevailing tax laws in both countries in respect to which country has a right to tax in terms of residence of the refugees or source of income. So there is, again, this issue about tax collection and income. This might require close discussion with such government tax bodies against the backdrop that such refugee hosting countries would be having a double tax treaty with another contracting party. So this is a very technical technical discussion of around the issue of tax collection when it comes to gig work across platforms that have a transnational dimension. And Harriet is also explaining that in the context of Uganda specifically, which she is referring to, Uganda has 9 international tax treaties so far, with others that are pending for ratification. So thank you for sharing that. I see that there's another question in the chat. Is the course still available? The course is finishing officially today. This is the last session of the course, so unfortunately for this year, it's a little bit too late. But there will be another edition next year, so keep in touch. Send us a message if you are interested. We're going to make available as soon as possible the enrollment link for the future edition of the course, which will take place in 2025, but feel free to send us a message. I think Marion has shared our migration@itcilo.org address in the chat box if you would like to have more information on the course, on this course specifically, or on other upcoming courses that have to do with the ILO response to displacement situations. So let me pick back up my round of thanks. I was saying a very big thank you to the participants who have joined today, whether they had been part of the course or not, and I'm very happy to also expand the pool of our attendees and participants that we are interacting with. And let me thank very much Zulum and Bea from the ILO headquarters. They have been a bit the engines behind this session today. They've been supporting us in making sure that the session could happen today and that it could be also opened to a wider audience, both in terms of participating speakers and of listeners joining us today. Thank you, Amy from UNHCR. Thank you, Henny from UNDP. Thank you, Hester from Humans in the Loop. And thank you in absentia also to Tess, who had to leave a little bit earlier. Thank you for helping us in make this this session a success. And as usual, a very, very big thank you to the stars behind the scenes of these sessions. Marion from our side for all of the logistics and the organization involved in making sure that this session could happen. And also to the interpreters that are helping us reach a wider audience also in terms of the languages that we speak, for making sure that this session was also available in Arabic. Before we close, I'm going to just ask one last sort of a lightning round, a very quick question to the panelists that are still here with us. We had one question in the chat, which was actually one of the first questions that we received, and I put it on hold because it felt like a good way of wrapping up the session. So it's asking about what are the future initiatives that are planned to further integrate digital services for refugees and host communities. So looking at the future, if you had to name one key priority or one key direction that your organization is going to be looking in for the next, the near future, which one would it be? And I'm going to start with Zulum, and then I'm going to Amy, then Henny, then Hester. Thank you.
Yes, I think that we like difficult questions. But no, one I think that is definitely important for the ILO is that this digital transformation cannot happen without governments, employers, workers, and other important stakeholders in this ecosystem are sitting in the driving seat with regards to how this is going to be planned and ensure that it's aligned with decent work, with inclusion, with all these values. That is a human center and that is good for all, no, as our ITU colleague says. So how are we going to integrate issues of skills with better mapping of labor demand and labor supply, with employment strategy, cybersecurity issues, regulations, so many of these. So what we're thinking in the ILO and what is next for us is to continue working towards policy change in these areas. So over and thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Zoom. Amy, please, over to you.
Sure. So I think one of our main focuses going forward, I'll mention two quickly. The first is actually to try and create more such spaces like this for actors to come together and really look at what are the strategic advantages of each of the actors that are emerging in this space, and what is going to be most useful for people to, actually try and focus on. So for instance, for us, looking at our protection mandate, for instance, we're focusing a lot now on digital risk within the digital economy and more generally. So we're working with the European Centre for Cybersecurity to put together a framework of digital risk. We're working on rolling out e-learning on programming digitally and risk elements of that, community-facing materials. So for us, that feels like our space, I guess. And so also accompanying that with like bringing lots of actors together to figure out what their role can play and how we can support that is our priority going forward. Thanks.
Thank you, Amy. Thank you very much. Henny, over to you.
Thank you, Mickey. And no, I suppose for us, really, I think the one word that comes to mind is agency, right? So I think, I mean, UNDP's work, the human development approach is all around expanding choices, right, for people. And I, in our partnership, in all of our work, with all the partners here and those who are participating in this course, is how do we support governments? How do we support local communities, who are affected by crisis, by forced displacement, to help to build agencies of everyone who's been impacted, and I just perhaps make a pitch here for do look out for our upcoming report that we are very excited about, that we are working with UNHCR and with ILO on. I think it's been a long process, and a lot of thought has gone into it. It will, I think it covers a lot of what we've discussed today. How do we facilitate access to work? How do we reduce work-related costs? Improve working conditions, and also WADA, how can we support again, how can we make use of these labor platforms to build skills and experiences? So, and I welcome kind of all the engagement beyond this as well, to improve this thinking. I think it's an exciting field. The question on AI is excellent, and again, looking forward to furthering this agenda with you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Henny. Thank you very much. Hester, over to you.
From our perspective, I think really focusing on making sure that we are keeping up with the latest changes in AI technology, especially around generative AI, so we can continue to provide training, but also work opportunities in this area. It's super fast moving, so we need to have a focus on this. Secondly, from an impact perspective, relationship with employers. Firstly, employers and corporates who can provide annotation work for our teams. From a business perspective, this is very important for us. In corporates that recognize about ethical procurement, this is something that is a big focus for us, but also involving corporates and employers to create global employment pathways, because there are many fantastic international organizations who've made a commitment to employing refugees or supporting refugees. Often they have funding available, which is fantastic, but it's one thing to step from that funding and that commitment on a small scale to really thinking strategically, how do we open remote work opportunities to those who've been displaced, those who are searching to restart their career, to continue their professional ambitions. This is something I would love Humans in the Loop to develop over the next year, the next few years, these really concrete employment pathways, and also to work with other partners on this as well.
Thank you, Hester. Thank you very much. And thank you to all of you for these for the contributions that you shared in the session today. It's been a pleasure to be online with you in this panel. And I really look forward to, as I said, furthering the conversation and potentially creating more spaces for these conversations to happen. Thank you all very much. With this, I think we can consider the session officially closed. And for the participants in the course on access to distant work for refugees, we'll be in touch with one final notification on the pending issues and the pending requirements to complete the course. Thank you all, and see you online soon. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank
Bye.
you. Thank you. Bye-bye.